I found my son's divorce. Papers, my name was listed as the reason. The box wasn't sealed. That's what I remember most clearly. It sat on the floor of my son's spare bedroom, flaps open, papers visible inside like teeth in a half-closed mouth. I was carrying a lamp base past it when I saw my own name typed across a document near the top. I set the lamp down and picked up the paper. Petition for Dissolution of Marriage, filed but not finalized. And there, in Section 12, under grounds for irretrievable breakdown, my name. Respondent's father, Michael Brennan, interfered persistently in the marriage, creating insurmountable conflict and emotional harm. I read it twice. The words didn't change. My son had blamed me for the end of his marriage in a legal document I was never supposed to see. I folded the paper once and placed it back in the box. Then I finished carrying the lamp to the truck. We were helping David move into a rental house across town. His wife, Lauren, had left him 4 months earlier. He'd told us it was mutual, that they'd grown apart, that it was nobody's fault. I'd believed him because I wanted to, and because the alternative required questions I didn't know how to ask. My wife, Claire, had cried quietly for a week and then started baking casseroles David never ate. I'd offered to help him find a lawyer. He'd said he already had one. Now I understood why he hadn't wanted my help. I am 61 years old. I taught high school mathematics for 33 years before retiring. I know how to solve for an unknown variable. You isolate it. You apply inverse operations. You check your work. Standing in that bedroom with the August heat pressing through the window and my son's voice drifting up from the driveway below, I began to isolate. David was 34. He'd married Lauren 6 years ago in a ceremony I'd paid for because he'd asked, and because I thought that's what fathers did. They'd bought a house 2 years later with a down payment Claire and I had gifted them. I'd helped David install a fence in the backyard. I'd repaired their water heater when it failed on Thanksgiving. I'd been to their home perhaps a dozen times a year, always by invitation, always briefly. I did not stay for dinner unless asked. I did not offer advice unless it was requested. I had believed, until that moment, that I had been a respectful and unobtrusive presence in my son's adult life. The document said otherwise. I carried 3 more boxes to the truck without speaking. David was loading furniture with his friend Marcus. Claire was wrapping dishes in the kitchen. No one noticed my silence because I'm often quiet. It's a trait people mistake for calm. What it actually is, most of the time, is observation. That night I sat in my study while Claire slept. I didn't tell her what I'd found, not yet. I needed to understand it first. I opened my laptop and searched for the attorney's name listed on the document, a family law firm downtown. I wrote down the phone number. Then I opened my email and scrolled back through 6 years of messages to and from David. There weren't many. David wasn't a frequent correspondent. Most of what I found were short exchanges about holiday plans or requests for help with household repairs. I found one message from 3 years ago where I'd declined to co-sign a loan for a truck David wanted to buy. I'd explained that co-signing would affect my credit and that I trusted he could manage it independently. He'd written back, saying he understood. There had been no argument. I found another message from 2 years ago where David had asked my opinion about whether he should take a job in another city. I'd told him it sounded like a good opportunity, but that the decision was his and Lauren's to make together. He'd stayed in his current job. I didn't know if that was because of my answer or despite it. I found nothing that suggested interference, nothing that explained the language in that petition. I printed the messages and put them in a folder. Then I sat in the dark and listened to the house settle. Claire murmured something in her sleep down the hall. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed on the street outside. I felt the way I used to feel when a student's test answers didn't match the work they'd shown. The conclusion was there, but the proof was missing. I decided I would find it. The next morning, I called the attorney's office. I gave my name and said I was calling regarding the Brennan dissolution case. The receptionist put me on hold. A woman's voice came on the line a moment later. Professional. Clipped. Mr. Brennan, this is Ann Hollis. I represented your daughter-in-law in her divorce proceedings. How can I help you? I saw the petition, I said. I'd like to understand why my name appears in it. There was a pause. I'm not able to discuss the details of a client's case. Lauren isn't your client anymore. The case was withdrawn. That doesn't change the confidentiality obligations. I kept my voice level. I'm not asking you to violate anything. I'm asking if you can tell me whether the claims in that document came from Lauren or from someone else. Another pause, longer this time. I can tell you that the petition was drafted based on information provided by the petitioner. Lauren. Yes. Did she provide specific examples of my interference? Mr. Brennan, I really can't. Did she seem credible to you? The line went quiet. Then Ann Hollis said, off the record, and only because I think you deserve to know this much, your daughter-in-law was very upset when she came to me. She said her husband had made her feel isolated and that you had been weaponized in arguments as a way to undermine her. She didn't provide a lot of detail. She also withdrew the petition before we went to deposition, which suggests to me that either the situation changed or the grounds weren't as solid as she initially believed. Did she say why she withdrew it? No, she just stopped returning my calls. I thanked her and hung up. Weaponized. That was the word that stayed with me. I'd been used in arguments I'd never participated in. My son had invoked me, somehow, to hurt his wife, and then he'd allowed her to name me in a legal document rather than correct the record. I called David that afternoon. He answered on the third ring, his voice easy and unbothered. Hey, Dad, what's up? I'd like to talk, I said. Can you come by the house? Is everything okay? I'd just like to talk. He came that evening. Claire was at book club. I'd timed it that way. David sat on the couch in the living room and accepted the glass of water I offered. He looked tired. His hair needed cutting. He'd lost weight. I sat across from him and placed the folded petition on the coffee table between us. I found this when we were moving your things. He looked at it. His face didn't change, but his hands went still. That was Lauren's, he said. She filed it and then changed her mind. I know. What I don't know is why my name is in it. He picked up the glass and drank. She was upset. She said a lot of things that weren't true. What things? That you didn't like her, that you made her feel unwelcome, that I sided with you over her. Did you? No. I waited. He looked at the wall behind me. I counted to 10 in my head. Then I said, David, if Lauren believed those things, where did she get the idea? I don't know. She just felt that way. Did you ever tell her that I criticized her, or that I thought she wasn't good enough for you? No. Did you ever use my name in arguments to make her feel outnumbered? His jaw tightened. Why would I do that? That's what I'm asking. He stood up. I don't want to do this right now. Sit down. He didn't sit, but he didn't leave either. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking at the door. Lauren didn't come up with this on her own, I said. She either believed it because you told her, or she believed it because you let her believe it. Which is it? It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. He turned to face me then, and for just a second, I saw something in his expression I didn't recognize, something cold and calculating. Then it was gone. She was going to take the house, he said. She had a lawyer. I needed leverage. Leverage? I told her you'd never forgive her if she dragged us through a trial. I told her you'd make her life hell. She believed me because she was already scared of disappointing you. I felt something drop in my chest. You lied to her about me to manipulate her into giving up. I did what I had to do. And when she filed this petition, you didn't correct it. It didn't go anywhere. I don't see why it matters. I stood. My hands were shaking. I put them in my pockets so he wouldn't see. Get out of my house. He blinked. Dad, get out. Don't come back until you're ready to explain to me why you thought it was acceptable to use me as a weapon against your wife, and then let her name me in a legal document accusing me of ruining your marriage. You're overreacting. I'm done talking. Leave. He left. The door closed quietly behind him. I stood in the living room until the sound of his car faded. Then I sat down and put my head in my hands. Claire came home an hour later. I told her everything. She cried, which I'd expected. Then she got angry, which I hadn't. He lied to that girl, she said. He scared her with your name. He made you into a villain. Yes. And he doesn't think he did anything wrong. No. She looked at me. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. What are you going to do? I'm going to find out what really happened. I started with Lauren. I didn't have her new number, but I knew where she worked. She was a graphic designer for a marketing firm downtown. I called the main line and asked to be transferred. When she answered, I identified myself and asked if we could meet. I don't think that's a good idea, she said. I understand, but I found the divorce petition. I know what it says. I'd like to hear your side. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Coffee. Tomorrow. Noon. The place on 5th Street. She was already seated when I arrived. She looked older than I remembered, thinner. Her hands were wrapped around a mug and she didn't look up when I sat down. Thank you for meeting me, I said. She nodded. I want you to know that I never said the things David told you I said. She looked up then. Her eyes were tired. I know. You know? I figured it out after I left him. I talked to your wife at the grocery store a few months ago. She was kind. She asked how I was. She didn't act like someone who thought I'd ruined her son's life. David told you I thought that? He told me a lot of things. That you thought I was too controlling, that you said I didn't respect him, that you'd told him he could do better. She paused. I believed him because he said it when we fought, and I was too angry to question it. I thought you were the reason he never stood up for me. Stood up for you about what? Everything. His mother wanted us to have kids right away. I wasn't ready. David told me you'd both said I was being selfish. When I got a promotion at work, he said you'd told him I was prioritizing my career over our marriage. When I asked him to help more around the house, he said you'd raised him to believe a man shouldn't have to do a woman's work. I felt my chest tighten. I never said any of that. I know. Her voice broke. I wasted 3 years being afraid of you. And then when I finally decided to leave, my lawyer told me to document everything. That's when I realized I didn't have anything except David's word. No emails, no witnesses, nothing. Just him telling me what you supposedly thought. Why did you put my name in the petition? Because my lawyer said I needed to explain why the marriage was irretrievable. David had convinced me. You were the problem. By the time I realized he was lying, I'd already filed. I withdrew it because I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't deserve that. She started crying. I gave her my handkerchief. We sat in silence while she composed herself. Did he ever hurt you? I asked. Not physically, but he made me feel crazy, like I couldn't trust my own perception of things. He'd tell me I'd said something I hadn't said, or that I'd agreed to something I'd never agreed to. When I pushed back, he'd say I was being irrational. He told me my friends didn't really like me. He told me my boss was looking for a reason to fire me. He made me feel like he was the only person I could trust, and then he'd use that to control me. I recognized the pattern. I'd seen it before in students who were being abused at home. The isolation, the distortion of reality, the erosion of self-trust. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked. I did. I told his friend Marcus. Marcus said David was just stressed about money and that I should be more supportive. Marcus, the same Marcus who'd helped us move David's things. I filed that away. What finally made you leave? I found messages on his phone. He was telling another woman the same things he'd told me about you, that his father was controlling and that it was putting stress on our marriage. He was using you as an excuse for why he couldn't commit to her. She looked at me. He was cheating on me and blaming you for it. I sat back. The pieces were arranging themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. Do you know who the woman was? Her name is Jessica. She works at his office. I don't think it went anywhere, but it showed me what he was. He doesn't take responsibility for anything. He just blames other people and moves on. I thanked her. She squeezed my hand before she left. I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking. My son was a liar, not a casual liar, a systematic one. He lied to control people. He lied to avoid consequences. He lied so fluently that even I, who had taught critical thinking for 3 decades, had accepted his version of events without question. I needed to know how deep it went. I started with Marcus. I called him that evening and asked if we could talk. He agreed to meet me at a bar near his apartment. When I arrived, he was already there, nursing a beer and watching a game on the television above the bar. I ordered a drink I didn't intend to finish and sat down beside him. "Thanks for meeting me," I said. "No problem, Mr. Brennan. What's up?" "I want to ask you about David and Lauren." He shifted in his seat. "That's kind of personal, man." "I know, but Lauren told me she talked to you before she left. She said you told her to be more supportive." "Yeah, well, David was going through a rough time. He'd just gotten passed over for a promotion. He was stressed." "Did he tell you why he got passed over?" "He said his boss didn't like him." "Did you believe that?" Marcus frowned. "Why? Wouldn't I?" "Because David has a pattern of blaming other people when things don't go his way. I'm trying to figure out if you've noticed that." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Look, David's my friend. I'm not going to sit here and trash him." "I'm not asking you to trash him. I'm asking you to be honest. Has he ever lied to you?" Marcus drank his beer. The game played on above us. Finally he said, "Yeah, once. He told me he'd paid me back for a loan I gave him. He hadn't. When I brought it up, he said he'd given me cash and that I must have forgotten. I knew I hadn't forgotten, but he was so sure about it that I started to doubt myself." "Did he ever pay you back?" "No." "Did you ask again?" "No, it wasn't worth the fight." I nodded. "Has he ever told you something about me that seemed off?" Marcus hesitated. "He said you were controlling, that you still treated him like a kid." "Did you see me act that way?" "No, but I figured it was just how he felt." "Did he ever tell you I blamed Lauren for their problems?" "Yeah, he said you didn't think she was good enough for him." "Did you ever hear me say that?" "No." "Did you ever ask him for specifics?" "No." Marcus looked at me. "Are you saying he made it up?" "I'm saying he told Lauren the same things and she believed him until she didn't. I'm trying to understand who else he's lied to and what the consequences have been." Marcus rubbed his face. "Man, I don't know. David's been my friend since college. If he's been lying this whole time, I don't know what that means. It means you decide whether to keep believing him or to start asking questions." I left him sitting there. I didn't know if he'd think about what I'd said or if he'd dismiss it. Either way, I'd planted a seed. Next, I called David's workplace. I didn't identify myself as his father. I said I was calling for a reference check and asked to speak with his supervisor. The woman who answered was cautious but cooperative. "I can confirm that David Brennan worked here for 5 years," she said. "He's no longer with the company." "Can you tell me why he left?" "I'm not able to discuss the details." "Was it voluntary?" A pause. No." "Was it related to performance?" "I really can't say more than that. I'm sorry." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called the HR department and left a message saying I was David's father and that I was trying to understand what had happened. I didn't expect a call back, but I got one the next day. The HR representative was a man named Kevin. He sounded young. "Mr. Brennan, I got your message. I'm limited in what I can share, but I wanted you to know that your son was terminated for cause. He violated company policy regarding workplace conduct." "Can you tell me what that means?" "He was found to have made false allegations against a coworker in an attempt to deflect from his own performance issues. When we investigated, we found that he had a pattern of blaming others for missed deadlines and errors that were his responsibility." "Was the coworker he accused named Jessica?" Kevin hesitated. "I can't confirm names." "Did the coworker file a complaint?" "Yes." "Was it resolved?" "The complaint was substantiated. That's why your son was terminated." I felt cold. "Thank you for telling me." "Mr. Brennan, I'm only telling you this because your son listed you as an emergency contact, and I think you should know what kind of situation he's in. He was given a severance package on the condition that he not pursue legal action. If he's told you a different version of events, I'd encourage you to verify it." "I will." I hung up and sat at my desk. The pattern was clear now. David lied to Lauren about me. He lied to Marcus about paying back a loan. He lied to his employer about a coworker. He lied to me about his marriage. He lied reflexively, strategically, without apparent remorse. I didn't know when it had started. I didn't know if I'd missed warning signs or if he'd learned to hide them. What I knew was that my son had become someone I didn't recognize, and I had a choice. I could enable it by staying silent, or I could confront it by setting boundaries and consequences. I chose the latter. I called Claire into the study and showed her everything I'd learned, the conversation with Lauren, the conversation with Marcus, the information from David's former employer. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was pale. "What do we do?" she asked. "We stop protecting him from the consequences of his choices." "What does that mean?" "It means no more money, no more gifts, no more helping him out of problems he created. It means we tell him that if he wants a relationship with us, he has to take responsibility for what he's done and make amends to the people he's hurt. He's going to be angry. I expect he will. He might cut us off. That's his choice to make." Claire looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. "Okay." I called David and asked him to come to the house the following evening. He agreed, his voice wary. When he arrived, Claire and I were seated in the living room. I'd arranged 3 chairs in a triangle. David sat across from us. "We need to talk about the truth," I said. He crossed his arms. "What truth?" "The truth about your marriage, the truth about your job, the truth about the lies you've been telling." His expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about. I spoke with Lauren. I spoke with Marcus. I spoke with your former employer. You've been lying to all of us, and you've been using my name to do it. Lauren's a liar. She's trying to turn you against me. Lauren withdrew a petition that could have hurt me because she realized you'd manipulated her. She has no reason to lie now. Then Marcus is lying. Marcus confirmed that you never paid him back and that you told him I was controlling. He also confirmed that he's never seen me act that way." David stood up. "This is insane. You're believing them over me." "I'm believing the evidence," I said. "You were fired from your job for making false accusations. You blame me for your marriage falling apart when the real reason was that you were cheating. You've been lying to everyone around you, and it stops now. You don't know what you're talking about. Sit down, David." "No." His voice was rising. "You've always thought you were better than me. You've always judged me. I'm done listening to this." "If you walk out that door," I said, "you won't be welcome back until you're ready to take responsibility for what you've done." "Fine." He headed for the door. "David," Claire said. Her voice cracked. "Please don't go." He stopped. For a moment I thought he'd turn around, but then he shook his head and walked out. The house felt empty after he left. Claire cried. I held her. We didn't speak for a long time. 3 days later, I received an email from David. It was short. "You've made your choice. Don't contact me again." I didn't respond. I saved the email in a folder with everything else. Then I went back to the routine I'd built over 61 years. I woke up. I made coffee. I read the paper. I worked in the garden. I had dinner with Claire. I went to bed. But something had shifted. I found myself replaying moments from David's childhood. The time he'd blamed a broken window on a neighbor kid who'd moved away. The time he'd told his teacher I'd said he didn't need to do homework because he was too smart for it. The time he'd convinced his younger cousin that I'd promised them both new bikes and then acted confused when I said I'd never made that promise. I'd dismissed those moments as normal childhood behavior, but they hadn't been isolated incidents. They'd been a pattern I'd failed to name. 2 weeks after David's email, Lauren called me. "I wanted you to know that David contacted me," she said. "He asked if I'd be willing to reconcile." "What did you say?" I said no. But he didn't accept that. He sent me a long message saying he'd changed and that he understood now why things went wrong. He said he'd been in therapy and that his therapist had helped him see how his father's controlling behavior had damaged him. I closed my eyes. He's still lying. I know, but I wanted you to know in case he tries to use this against you again. Thank you. Mr. Brennan, I don't think he's going to change. I think he believes his own lies. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. I feel like I should have seen it sooner. I should have protected you from being named in that petition. You were a victim too, Lauren. Don't carry that weight. She thanked me and hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. A month passed, then 2. David didn't call. Claire and I talked about him sometimes in the evenings, but mostly we let the silence sit. I cleaned out the guest room where he used to stay when he visited. I packed his old things into boxes and put them in the garage. I didn't throw them away, but I didn't leave them where I'd see them every day either. In early November, Marcus called me. "Mr. Brennan, I wanted to let you know that David asked me for money. He said you'd cut him off and that he couldn't make rent. Did you give it to him?" "No, I told him I'd think about it. But then I remembered what you said about patterns. So I asked him why he couldn't make rent. He said he'd lost his job because his boss had it out for him. When I asked for details, he got defensive. So I called his old company and talked to Kevin in HR. What did Kevin tell you? That David was fired for lying, and that he'd been lying about me too. He told his boss I'd been helping him cover up mistakes. It wasn't true, but it put me in a bad position. If I hadn't called, I wouldn't have known. I'm sorry, Marcus. Don't be. I should have asked questions sooner. I just wanted you to know that I'm not giving him money, and I'm not covering for him anymore. I appreciate that. For what it's worth, Mr. Brennan, you did the right thing. I wish I'd done it sooner. After Marcus hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not relief, exactly. More like confirmation. I'd made the right choice. The hard choice. The one that required me to see my son clearly rather than through the lens of hope or obligation. In December, Claire and I hosted a small Christmas gathering. Lauren came. So did Marcus. We didn't talk about David, but his absence was noticeable. Claire set the table for 3 instead of 4. I poured 3 glasses of wine instead of 4. We toasted to honesty and new beginnings. It was enough. In January, I received a letter from David, not an email. A physical letter, handwritten on unlined paper. The handwriting was shaky, as though he'd written it in a moving car or in a state of agitation. Dad, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to understand that I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I made mistakes. I said things I shouldn't have said. But I'm your son. Doesn't that count for something? Doesn't that mean you should forgive me? I read the letter twice. Then I put it in the folder with everything else. I didn't respond. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't something I owed anyone. It was something I gave when the person asking for it had demonstrated accountability and change. David hadn't done that. He'd only asked to be excused. That wasn't the same thing. Spring came. Claire and I planted tomatoes in the garden. I fixed a section of fence that had come loose over the winter. We took a trip to the coast and spent 3 days walking on the beach and eating seafood. We didn't talk about David, but sometimes I'd catch Claire staring at the horizon with a look I couldn't quite name. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she said, "Do you think he'll ever change?" "I don't know," I said. "I hope so, but I can't base my decisions on hope." "Do you miss him?" "I miss who I thought he was." She nodded. We sat in silence until the light faded. In June, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Brennan?" A woman's voice, uncertain. "Yes. My name is Jessica. I worked with your son. I'm calling because I think you should know something." I sat down. "Go ahead." "David contacted me a few months ago. He said he wanted to apologize for what happened at work. I agreed to meet him because I thought it might give me closure. But when we met, he didn't apologize. He tried to convince me that you were the reason he'd acted the way he did. He said you'd raised him to see women as inferior and that he was trying to unlearn that." I felt my jaw tighten. "That's not true." "I know. I looked you up. I found articles you'd written about education and equity. I found interviews where you talked about encouraging your students to think critically. You're not the person David described." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to leave me alone, and then I blocked his number. But I wanted you to know that he's still using your name. He's still lying." "Thank you for telling me." "Mr. Brennan, I don't know if this matters, but I think you should protect yourself. David's getting more desperate. I'm worried about what he might do." "I'll be careful." She hung up. I sat on the porch until Claire came outside. "Who is that?" she asked. I told her. Her face went pale. "What if he comes here?" she said. "Then we'll call the police." "Michael, I'm scared." "I know, but we've done nothing wrong. We've set boundaries. We've been honest. If David chooses to escalate, that's on him, not us." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about Jessica's warning, about the pattern of escalation I'd seen in David's behavior, about the fact that he was running out of people to blame. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not for a lawsuit, just for advice. The lawyer's name was Richard. He listened to my story without interrupting. "You need to document everything," he said. "Every message, every call, every interaction. If David shows up at your house uninvited, you need to call the police and file a report. You need to establish a paper trail. I have documentation already, I said. Good, keep it current. And if he threatens you or your wife, get a restraining order. Has it come to that? I don't know, but it's better to be prepared. I thanked him and hung up. Then I went through the folder I'd been keeping and made copies of everything. I stored the originals in a safe deposit box at the bank. I gave copies to Claire and told her to keep them at her sister's house. Is this really necessary? She asked. I hope not, but I'm not willing to take chances. 3 weeks later, David showed up at our house. It was early evening. Claire and I were in the kitchen making dinner. We heard a car door slam, then footsteps on the porch, then the doorbell. I looked through the peephole. David stood on the porch, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. I opened the door, but left the screen door latched. What do you want, David? I want to talk. We've talked. You didn't listen. I'm listening now. Are you here to take responsibility for what you've done? He shifted his weight. I'm here to explain. I'm not interested in more explanations. I'm interested in accountability. You're being unreasonable. I'm being clear. If you want a relationship with me, you need to stop lying. You need to apologize to the people you've hurt. You need to show, through your actions, that you're willing to change. Until you do that, you're not welcome here. His face flushed. You can't just cut me out of your life. I didn't cut you out. You chose this when you walked out of this house and sent me an email telling me not to contact you. I was angry. I know. But anger doesn't excuse lies, and it doesn't obligate me to accept behavior that's harmful. He stared at me. For a moment I thought he might shout, but then his expression shifted into something colder. You're going to regret this, he said. That sounds like a threat. It's a fact. If you threaten me or my wife, I'll file a police report. If you show up here uninvited again, I'll pursue a restraining order. Are we clear? He didn't answer. He turned and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away. Then I locked the door and called the police non-emergency line. I explained what had happened and asked if I could file a report. The officer who took the call was patient. Has he threatened physical harm? No, but he said I'd regret setting boundaries with him. That's not quite enough for a restraining order, but I'll file a report so there's documentation. If he comes back or escalates, call us immediately. I thanked him and hung up. Claire was standing in the kitchen doorway. What now? She asked. Now we wait. Or, we didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, I received an email from David. It was long, rambling, filled with accusations. He said I'd abandoned him, that I'd chosen Lauren over him, that I'd turned his friends against him, that I'd ruined his life. He said he'd been talking to a lawyer about suing me for defamation. I forwarded the email to Richard, my attorney. He called me an hour later. This isn't a legal threat, Richard said. It's a tantrum. He's not going to sue you. He has no grounds. But you should respond once, calmly and briefly, reiterating your boundaries. Then stop engaging. I wrote a short email. David, I've set clear boundaries. I'm willing to rebuild our relationship if you take responsibility for your actions and make amends to the people you've hurt. Until then, I won't be responding to further messages. I hope you find the help you need. I sent it and then blocked his email address. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then I got a call from Lauren. David contacted my workplace, she said. He told them I'd stolen documents from him during our divorce and that I was unethical. My boss called me in for a meeting. I had to explain the whole situation. What did your boss say? She believed me, but it was humiliating, and it's made me wonder what else he's capable of. I'm sorry, Lauren. It's not your fault, but I wanted you to know in case he tries something similar with you. I thanked her and called Richard again. He's escalating, Richard said. You need to go ahead and file for a restraining order. This kind of harassment campaign is exactly what those orders are designed to prevent. I filed the paperwork the next day. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, I heard nothing from David. The hearing was brief. I presented the documentation, the emails, the threats, the harassment of Lauren and Jessica. David didn't show up. The judge granted the order without hesitation. This will prevent him from contacting you or coming within 500 feet of your home or workplace for 1 year, the judge said. If he violates it, he'll be arrested. I thanked her and left the courthouse. Claire was waiting in the car. I told her what happened. Is it over? She asked. For now. She nodded. We drove home in silence. The restraining order worked. David didn't contact me. He didn't show up at the house. I didn't hear from him directly or indirectly. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But the cost lingered. I'd lost my son, not to death or distance, but to a moral failure I couldn't fix. He'd chosen lies over truth, manipulation over honesty, self-protection over accountability. And I'd chosen boundaries over enabling. It was the right choice, but it wasn't an easy one. A year passed. The restraining order expired. I didn't renew it. By then, David had moved to another state. I heard this from Marcus, who'd stayed in touch. David had found a new job. He'd told his new co-workers the same stories about me. Marcus had stopped trying to correct the record. Some people don't want to see the truth, Marcus said. They'd rather believe the story that makes them comfortable. I know, I said. Do you think he'll ever come around? I don't know. I hope so, but I'm not waiting for it. Marcus nodded. We finished our coffee and parted ways. Claire and I built a new routine. We visited Lauren occasionally. We spent time with friends. We traveled. We worked in the garden. We lived. But sometimes, late at night, I'd think about the boy David had been, the one who'd climbed into my lap to read stories, the one who'd built model rockets in the garage, the one who'd asked me to teach him chess and then beaten me by the time he was 12. I didn't know when that boy had disappeared. I didn't know if he'd ever really existed or if I'd just seen what I wanted to see. What I knew was this: I'd done everything I could. I'd set boundaries. I'd told the truth. I'd protected myself and the people David had hurt. I'd chosen integrity over comfort. And if that wasn't enough for him, then it would have to be enough for me. On a quiet Sunday in early autumn, Claire and I sat on the porch watching the leaves turn. The air was cool. The light was golden. The world felt, for a moment, entirely manageable. Do you have regrets? Claire asked. About David? Yes. I thought about it. I regret that I didn't see the pattern sooner. I regret that I made excuses for behavior I should have questioned. But I don't regret setting boundaries, and I don't regret protecting us. Do you think he's happy? I don't know. I hope he finds a way to be. She reached for my hand. I held it. We sat together as the sun set and the shadows lengthened and the evening came on soft and inevitable. I'm 62 now. I spent 33 years teaching young people how to solve problems. I taught them to check their work, to question assumptions, to follow the logic wherever it led. I thought I'd learned those lessons too. But the hardest problems aren't the ones with clear answers. They're the ones where the variables are people, and the equations involve love and loss, and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes caring for someone means letting them face the consequences of their own choices. I found my son's divorce papers. My name was listed as the reason, and in trying to clear my name, I discovered something worse. My son was a liar, not just to his wife, but to me, to his friends, to his employers. He'd built his life on a foundation of dishonesty, and when I confronted him, he chose the lies over the truth. I couldn't fix that. I could only refuse to be complicit in it. So I did. And I'll carry that choice with me for the rest of my life, not as a burden, but as a boundary I was finally strong enough to enforce.